Okay, so welcome. You all have received your questions in the mail, so the way we thought we would proceed tonight, perfect, is allowing you to do a presentation. We've allotted an hour for your group, so if you want to introduce everyone in the beginning, so we all know who everyone is. We have another group coming in right behind you,
Okay.
and they also may Zoom in at some point and watch your presentation because this is all open to the public.
Understood. Great.
So, and then we will save the last 15, 20 minutes of the hour for the committee to ask any questions that they might have.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, sorry to interrupt, in terms of logistics, how is the public viewing us?
They're viewing you on Zoom, so they'll see you if you either get up, you'll be facing us, so they're pretty much going to see the back of you, but
So
they'll hear you.
we're being video recorded, so we're over here.
The,
Video is going this way.
yeah, the camera is on the committee.
Okay, so they won't see us.
No.
Okay.
No.
Is that where they're
Not
supposed
unless you
to
stand where the
stand?
X is, which is eventually where the
So I
lectern
don't
is
know, it
going.
wasn't Steve who texted me back, it was Sarah saying she was waiting
Okay,
for Zoom.
oh,
It wasn't Steve.
okay. Okay. All right.
Steve
Great.
said-
We'll start. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to present our team and excited to talk about the project. My name is Paul Lewandowski with Paul Designs Project, and I'll go through the team that we have, but I wanted to start by introducing John Turk with Turk Architecture. John and I are partnering for this project. And we feel that we're both architects and we both, like doctors, architects specialize. And John is a very strong, we've known each other for 15 years now. We've been on boards together.
We go back.
And John's a very strong technical architect as well as an excellent designer. And I feel in my skill set, a lot of facilitation of public projects and meetings, as well as guiding a team. I will be the point person for the project, but John and I will be equal partners in our firms. And tonight with us, we have some other members of my firm. Andrew Jorge is an architectural designer. He's a graduate of UMaine Augusta and has joined me full time. He's been with me about 2 years now in October. Yes. And we've been sort of working very closely together. And then also Ellie Bradeen is a graduate of UMaine Orono, but also at Southern Maine Community College in their architecture interior design program. And she is working with us part-time, focusing on interiors as well. And Isaac Austin is a graduate of the Central Maine Community College, and he came to the firm through their internship program. And he has been with us now almost 9 months almost. And is going to University of Maine Augusta to get his degree in architecture. And I feel it's important. Mentorship is a big part of our firm and our culture. And that's why I've asked Isaac and Ellie, as well as Andrew, to be here, because even though they may not have a big role tonight, I think it's important for them to see this process and to understand what it's like to get work. And I know that there were some people that did that for me when I was a young architect, and it benefited me. So I'm passing that forward. Completing our team, our consultant team for mechanical plumbing, we have Kurt Magnuson of Magnuson Engineering. We have Swift Current Engineering for electrical. And then for civil, structural, and the survey, we're working with Trillium Engineering, and Eric Doobie is going to be joining via the Zoom link. He may be, there he is behind me. And then also, I know we had put something in our proposal about potentially bell restoration or something like that. And we had John Taggart was the person that we had on board for that. And that's of course something that may or may not happen, but it's someone we brought onto our team. What have I missed, John?
Back to Jonathan Taggart. He's the city of Portland's art conservator. So he repairs the sculpture and whatnot. And I've worked with him on a handful of bell restoration projects. So I just thought it would be interesting to throw him into the menu option. Because from my perspective, I'd love to see your bell restored, and he's definitely the guy to do it. And it's in the big scheme of things, it's a fairly modest cost. So we just thought we'd bring it up as a menu option.
So would you like us to just continue through the list of items? Great. I don't know how we're doing on, I think we're right on time.
I don't have a clock.
I have one right here. I just looked back 5 minutes in, we're done. So you've asked us to describe one project that we've been involved with that we feel is relevant to this project. And it's one of the projects that we had in our proposal. We did bring some images, but I understand we're not able to project them. But there is information in here. It's the addition to the 317 Main Community Music Center that we're working on in Yarmouth right now. And that project is about an 8,000 square foot addition to their current building, which is a building that's on the National Register of Historic Places. It is a historic building. We are actually not doing any work to the existing building. They have maintained it. Everything we're doing is an addition. And the reason that I talk about that project and we wanted to present it is because it's really about the community. For them, they serve, I think, over 60 different towns people come from for music education, from 3-year-olds up to 83-year-olds is what they like to say. And we went through a very process with them of trying to decide what the building should be, how to fit it with their budget, how to build it. We're actually using cross-laminated timber, which is a new wood technology where they laminate basically 2x6s together and make these big planks that are almost 7 inches thick, 30 feet high, 8 feet wide. And we're building a 200-person auditorium with them. It's a sustainable measure. It's great for acoustics. They wanted to demonstrate stewardship of the environment as part of what they were doing, but not go for any metrics like LEED or anything like that. They just wanted to be good ecological citizens. So that's one of the reasons we looked at it. And it's also a technology that we're hoping will come to Maine. So that was exciting to work with. The project has a lot of interface with the community. The large hall that we're doing will also be, they're looking at as rental opportunity, ways to raise money, which I know is something that potentially could happen here. So we've talked a lot about basic logistics of that. Do we do a full kitchen or do we do a catering kitchen? I noticed the plans you gave us, you had a full kitchen. Perhaps it only needs to be a catering kitchen. That's a discussion that we would have. Then how do things get loaded in and out of the building? What's accessibility like? How do we get people who are mobility challenged into the building? We're even doing, in this case, we are doing unisex bathrooms because there's a lot of children and parents want to take their child to the bathroom. So it's communal sinks, but all of the stalls are in separate rooms. So, and there's a family bathroom, which was another important part of this project. So really thinking holistically about how the public would interact with that building, which is very much what we feel your building is about, and understanding how it might be used and what are the possible uses of the building. So that's something that I think we're eager to work on and discuss with you. And I know you all have ideas. We imagined our own as we've been talking and preparing for tonight. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else about that project. I said we have a couple minutes if you want.
Well, we had to be very flexible and adaptable with budget, especially over the COVID increases in material costs, but also their fundraising for everything. And they got some donations from what was that foundation? Was that Melinda Gates?
Not Gates,
No.
but the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos had given them some. They were
So
recipients of.
they got an unexpected donation, but it's all fundraising, all community raised. And so budget's been very important. So meeting that while also providing all the amenities that they feel is necessary for the community and for their staff and volunteers has been part of our process along the whole way. I think they've been pretty happy with it. It's been very successful and we're almost into construction.
We break ground in the middle of October. We've been working on the shop drawings for the cross-laminated timber, which has been a great process, and hammering out the budget as it had a lot of effect. And we could talk more about that when we talk about budget, but for other sections. But I'm going to move on to question number 3, which was describing, and I had a question about this. When you asked us to describe the scope of the property survey work to be completed, and we weren't sure if you meant the physical survey of the grounds or the recording of the building as it existed, or both. We were a little
So
confused.
in other words, as part of any project that is an old building, my role will be to come in and do an architectural survey, to poke around and put halls into wood timbers and whatnot, and identify problem areas that need repair. So that's a question. So it's really a clarifying question. What does question number 3 really mean? And as an example, I typically like to work with a structural engineer, so I would work with, I've talked about with Paul, working with Andrew to do the field work, and we would call in Eric or somebody from his firm. Eric's the structural engineer, to assist us so that we can all gather on site and sort of kibitz about what the problems are and how to handle them, and then go back to the office and digest what that means and start to think about how that integrates into Paul's work, which is more the programming aspect.
We need to know what's there, basically. We want to start with a clear picture of what's there from a space standpoint, from a structural standpoint. You haven't had a number of surveys done, and we've read through those, so that's all part of this equation. And we've walked, John and I walked through the building, obviously, on the tour, and experienced the basement, among other things.
Oh, come on.
I always find delight into that.
I had to stop it from jumping in. But we would expect to do more of that, to really understand what's there, because once we know what's there, and then we would build a 3D computer model of it, which is another way that we understand the work. In fact, on 317, we actually printed out a 3D model of all of the cross-laminated timber to make sure that it would fit, and that was also very helpful. So that's another tool that we use. But really understanding the building, understanding where the challenges are, whether they're structural or weather stripping, or the shingles, which we know on the roof need to be replaced, all of those things. So that survey work is really a big part of starting up the project.
Would you also do survey of the property as far as property pins?
Correct,
Where
absolutely.
the building's set on the property to update that?
Yes, Trillium Engineering is on board for that work as well. I'm pointing to Eric behind me. He's probably smiling, I hope.
Yeah, yes.
They provide full survey work, so that'll be part of that work, and that was included in our proposal.
Excellent.
We're sort of running right here on schedule. Item number 4, the town has limited funds and would like to understand how you will manage your design costs so that we don't get surprises, and so that we have the services needed to plan, design, build the project. We were actually, as we looked at this list of questions, that question along with number 6 in some ways seemed to combine. But just to continue going through the list, we can talk a little bit about the services. John and I both have small businesses. We're small firms. I have worked for a number of firms in Maine. I'm a native of Lewiston and moved away to New York, and then came back and worked for a number of other firms in the state, large and small. And 3 years ago, started my own practice and have an office of 4 people now. And because we're small firms, we can be very nimble, and we can be sort of flexible. We have a sort of efficiency in the size of our firms and being able to be here. Because John and I and the rest of the team will be directly involved, we'll be aware of what's going on. And that's one of the first important parts of understanding the budget and how tight it is or isn't. In reality, there are a lot of things we don't know about the building. And we've heard some of the things that you'd like to do with the building, but we need to put those together. And in our proposal, we sort of made some assumptions that this seems like it will be a community space, so therefore it'll need these things. And we know that there's going to be some structural work, and then there'll be some restoration work as well. How do we balance those? And what we would do is we develop a cost model that's dynamic, that allows us to sort of prioritize and understand how much do we allocate to restoration of the building? How much do we allocate to furniture for the hall if you want to have seating in it? You know, these are all, you have a fixed pool of money, as we understand, and everything that you need to have this building function fully needs to come out of that budget, including paying for fees, both ours and other consultants that you have, as well as making sure that it doesn't leak and that it's heated. Yes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
for the bell tower, you said modest. What does modest expense mean to an architect? $10,000 or $100,000?
Varies on the architect.
I'm happy to jump in there. And I don't want to speak for Jonathan Taggart as an example, but the last bell tower project that I worked with him on was he did conditions assessment and recommendations for the historic alumni hall at UNE. And he charged like $2,000 to do his report. And then we had a contractor on board and they priced it with a sub. It came in at like, I want to say 21K or something, and UNE chose not to do it. But the bell also was in good working condition. It just needed, at some point, if they want to keep the bell, it needs work. It still rings, and that's all they cared about. In fact, at the ribbon cutting, they were ringing it away, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is wonderful." So I felt like they should have spent that 21K, but they chose not to.
Now, when you said the bell, you mean the metal of the bell had problems, or like the Liberty Bell crack in it, or is it
wasn't that dramatic.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to eat up all the time on this
Yeah.
topic, but it does give you a taste of what we are able to provide.
Well, it's a good example of an item that we're obviously excited about the bell because we think that the sound will be something that if this is a rental property, someone's having a wedding, they rent it out.
Right.
Ringing that bell is going to be
It's
so
a
special.
selling point. And
It's
we can
a,
talk about the
right.
nature of this building and what's attractive to a layperson or people in the community and why they would want to rent this hall. And I think there are certain things that are just endearing and people feel it deep in their heart, and it just makes sense to keep it going. It's been there for well over 100 years.
and we know there's passion in the community because they voted, you all voted
Right.
to do this. So we're making some assumptions, but that item would be on the list.
Okay.
And we don't know the condition. If it's in terrible condition, I might be a little pushier, but I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Now, you mean like rust or
Well, it's likely
I mean-
cast iron. It's probably not bronze.
probably made in Boston, I would think. I know the church bell was made by, can't remember the name of the company, but it was.
Howard, there are a number of Howard.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in because they've got a limited amount
Okay,
of
I'm
time to
sorry.
do their presentation.
Okay, yeah.
We've got a space for
Yep, no, no,
questions at the end.
that's fine.
That
Yeah.
also might be a
Okay,
conversation
Right, that's
for
fine.
later.
But as an
Or,
example, yeah, but as an example of this cost measure, it's something we put on the list and then we discuss with you. I mean, that's really the key to the cost in this project is
But I
that.
think it's worth repeating that both of our firms, well, I also wanted to say that I came here right after college in '86 and worked for two larger firms and then formed my own business for 20 years. And it became more specialized in historic preservation. And I found it was more rewarding because it was way more unknowns that we were getting into. So there were all these pieces that we had to juggle. And there was a fixed budget. I mean, it's Maine and it's not like there are unlimited budgets. So I just want to really emphasize, and we'll talk about item 6 in the preservation category when we get there.
So it'll be something as part of this discussion of items. Your question number 5, just moving forward, continuing, is do you feel this project is best suited for design, build, or construction manager for delivery? If we use a CM form, does your proposal include working with the town to procure a CM and coordination with the CM? John and I spoke about this last week and really feel strongly that the CM path is probably the best one. I think either one will work and they are both proven methods. But what we like about the CM path is just as in your selection process for a design team, you need trusted advisors. You need someone that you want to work with. And that should be something you're all considering about. Do you want to work with us as you're making the choice? But the same thing with your construction manager. And what they'll do is they'll provide a lot of service to that decision-making process, all of those unknowns that we're talking about, helping with budgeting. We can do estimating and have consultants to do estimating for the project. But really a construction manager, because they are building every day, they know what things cost. And they can help us. We went through this with 317 where lumber went from $30,000 to $150,000. And we had to make some decisions. And the construction manager was quoting prices weekly to help us. And now they've come back down and everybody's breathing a little bit again. But the construction manager, and in this case, it was Zachow Construction, but there are many fine construction management firms in the state of Maine. We can recommend some. We would absolutely be part of that process, and that is part of our proposal.
An additional benefit of having a CM on board is that there's buy-in and that they have some responsibility and they're not just lowballing a bid, that they've provided cost estimating services for you. And so there's a piece of paper that says, here's what it's going to cost. And we've worked with both the owner and the design team to better understand what we're getting into.
If an unknown condition comes up, if we open up some wall we weren't able to look at during the process and we discover that something is rotted or unexpected, if we had gone through a bid process, that's an immediate add. And in some ways, that's an opportunity for a contractor to make money because they can say, oh, well, we didn't know there was this condition, we will charge you this much. Whereas with a construction manager, we have a discussion. It's not about, it's more of a conversation about, okay, here's the condition. Here's ways to solve it if something comes up. And with them, we can balance the budget on other projects or other parts of the project. It may be rotted sills mean we don't restore the bell to ring on a subject we've been talking about. But I think,
Well, and phasing can be something, you know, we can, with the construction manager, or have a cost estimate that's phased and add that bell as a line item that, you know, in today's dollars is going to cost 25K. You don't afford it, but you know the general range and maybe you restore it in 10 years.
with the minimal amount of conversation that we've had about your project and what we know, that's the direction that we would recommend. And we would also recommend that you should try to retain that company as soon as possible. That process should start. Like I said, we can recommend some folks to talk to, or you would open bid. I believe in this case, you'd have to do an open bid as a municipal entity. But
through experience, I can say, and I won't be able to articulate this extremely clearly, but it streamlines the process and it establishes a relationship early on, and it adds value to the process.
A great project has great clients. We'll say, I won't say great architects, but competent architects. And a great builder, someone who's going to build it or manage it. And those are the three parts of the project. So having a great construction management firm in this case, I think would really facilitate this project because of so many unknowns. If you did choose to go with a traditional design bid build, what we would do is we would produce a very tight set of documents, as tight as we could, to try to minimize those unknowns. But that is a challenge in this project, but we would do our best. Obviously, we always try to do our best. But I think we would recommend CM, just to answer that question that way. I think we're still on schedule. Number 6. Timely. Some proposers mentioned historic preservation. Please explain what your thoughts are as to whether or not this project is a good candidate based on the town objectives and the cost implications. So again, this is another question that we talked a lot about because we're trying to understand where the question is coming from. What you have is a fantastic building over there. That way, sorry, I got rotated that way. You have a fantastic building that what we perceive has a lot of passion in the town. People love the building and it is in decay. So when we talk about historic preservation, for us, it's about stabilization to start with, understanding what's there. We often talk about, it's a little cliche, but honoring the past and building on the future. But you want a modern facility that people can use and that meets code and that people can feel pride in now. And then also have pride in the building that was there and preserving that history. So in the case of historic preservation, we don't see it as an additional cost to the project. We really see it more as a process that we would go through regardless of any building if it wasn't if it was historic or not.
And I have to interject.
Yeah, please do.
I find that buildings of that era, even if they're haven't been maintained for 70 years, are in better condition than, often in better condition than modern buildings that haven't been maintained for 15 years.
They were built better.
They were built better. They were built to last.
Yeah, that building compared to the rest of the complex is.
I can almost guarantee you, for that amount of square footage, there's likely less cost per square foot than a 1960s era building.
Yeah, to restore. So thinking about that building and thinking about some of the potential uses that you have, town hall, meeting space, rental facility, obviously, maybe it's for lectures or music or those sort of things. They all point to a real value in restoring the building and using it as you've chosen to do, because it works from a town pride sense, but it also works from rental, marketing. It's like, it's a beautiful building. Who wouldn't want, to have their event there or schedule a retreat here,
Yeah, and I've seen it over and over. Restored facilities attract people from unexpected places that you'll find that you'll be able to rent them.
So if that's the gem, what we need to do is develop sort of the setting around it, which is the infrastructure. What the kitchen is like, and the restrooms and some meeting space and other things, and an elevator. How does that support it so that it makes this building usable in the requirements we have today for a building like that? Life safety issues, access issues with, for accessibility, those sort of things. So I hope we've sort of addressed the question is really about not an additional cost for historic preservation, but really part of the process and part of what we've included in our proposal. And I just want to take one step back. We did include a sort of construction management fee in our list of soft costs for the project, assuming that you might go that route. So that's not something that we control, or it would be a negotiation between you and the construction manager. But based on our current experience, we took a percentage that we've seen more often than not and added that as a line item in the process, just to help sort of, we can control some costs, the soft costs, which are costs of things like that or fees. We don't, they're more in your part, but we can advise and help you with that. So just wanted to back up to that. All right, then number 7, please explain on what your proposal includes for construction services. We're proposing full services for construction during the construction period. We would assume that we prefer to be involved throughout the process, especially in a project like this, because of potential unknowns. And in those unknowns, we want to be here to be able to have those conversations with you. I mean, we're going to try to minimize those unknowns, but there's always.
It almost goes without saying that both Paul and I have been through this process many times.
You more than me.
I'm only a couple years old.
Hey.
So yes, I think it is, any design team with experience is going to be able to provide those years of experience and needs to be involved from the beginning to the end through construction.
Right, so that includes, there'll be periodic meetings, regardless of whether it's CM or design build, there'll be meetings, there'll be kickoff meetings. A lot of times we find that during the process is when a lot of the selections are made for finishes. We may say this room will be carpet, but what pattern and what color? And as Ellie and I've been working as an architect. I'm an architect, but I've been in commercial interiors for 20 years, and Ellie has proven herself to be adept at interiors as well. So together, we can propose things, but that often happens during that phase because it's just, we're worried about other things. So that's just one of the parts that would happen. There's logistics that would happen. Usually the contractor or the construction manager would have a monthly pay request. We would review that to make sure that they say they've done 50% of the masonry work, and we would come to the site and look and say, yes, they have done 50% of the masonry work. You can pay them for that work. Or we could say, looks like you've only done 35, so they'll pay you 35. And that's our professional opinion. And this is a standard service. This is not, I mean, I would assume most architects would provide this service, but it's.
And then as unknowns are discovered, we're available to work with the contractor and the owner to come up with solutions.
Good. All right, I'm gonna keep moving on and we can obviously come back to any of these during Q&A. Number 8, please discuss any services that you have not included that might be included. Again, the town has limited funding and needs to confirm the designer's scope and budget are adequate for the project. Also, please comment on any geotechnical needs if those services are covered in your proposal. I'll take the geotechnical first. I think that's a relatively easy question. We have not included it as part of our services, but we did include some fee in our proposal in the soft costs that would cover it. We would expect that it's probably 2 or 3 test pits maybe near the building.
Well, just based on the schematic design that we were presented, it looks like there's potential for an addition in the rear. And if it's a simple addition, we would probably want either 2 or 4 borings.
So it's probably price start $25,000 to $5,000. I mean, probably closer to 2,500 worth. So
I just did one in Biddeford. It was 3,500 for 4 borings.
okay, great. So in that range, and I believe we would need to do that, but like I said, we have included that in a soft cost in the fee section. I think we had $5,000 and then that was going to cover the restoration of the study on the bell if necessary, if that happens, as well as the geotechnical. As far as other services, we are proposing the basic services that basic construction, architecture and design services, including interior design, the selection of finishes. So one way to think about that is if you could pick up the building and shake it, anything that doesn't fall out is something that's taken care of during this phase. The selection of furniture and equipment is something that's typically not a service that we offer, that we are including. It is something that we've done, but we've done it for some clients where we coordinate with you and getting bids from furniture vendors. Let's assume the hall is going to need chairs, unless you have some. But if you needed chairs, what we're doing at 317 is we're actually having a chair fair where we're working with a vendor. They're bringing in 5 chairs, and we're asking people on the staff and the committee to sit in these chairs. And we've got price information on them, and we want them to say, okay, if you're going to sit through an hour performance, is this comfortable? And the $100 chair, is that comfortable? The $250 chair, is that comfortable? And remember, you have 200 of them, so this is an important decision to make. Picking out desks, if we did it for offices, there are many fine desks and we could recommend some. So that is sort of low-level service. If you wanted us to complete full bid packages for furniture, that would be a service that's a service we haven't included. But to be honest, I don't believe you need that. I think you probably we could offer some advice if you'd like and help you through that process. We feel it's important because we like to, I won't say architects are control freaks, but we
we like to be able to show up at the end and have a beautiful thing to photograph.
everything has to. So the right chair, but it needs to be the comfortable chair and the right finish. And, there may be some reason for a certain chair, but we would make recommendations and listen to you about what it is you wanted. As far as just thinking about any other services that were.
I have to say, from my experience, this is typical sounds generic. It sounds completely thorough, but typical for a project of this type. If there were added items, it would be, I would say, unusual.
Right. I mean, we assume you're not looking for any LEED certification or passive house certification. We like to build as energy efficient as possible and as energy efficient as the budget will allow. When we talk about sustainability, we talk about 3 tenets. It's being a healthy workplace or healthy environment for people, being good stewards of the environment, and then lastly, saving energy.
And actually, that's a point that I hadn't thought of. There's a preservation benefit that can be negotiated with state review. This will have to be reviewed with the state fire marshal, but because it's a historic property, there's actually a chapter at the end of the life safety code that talks about historic buildings. And I negotiate downgrades or mixing and matching requirements because of a historic building and a budget. So it's just an aside that there is a benefit to having that preservation expertise on board.
Right. Right. So we're not, as far as the question, we're not proposing any sort of lead services, but our intention is to design a building that is efficient so that it saves you money and is a healthy place for people to be. Those, I think, are very important, and that's part of a modern building. And then we're ahead of schedule now, but I'm going to go into question number 9. Review your approach to estimating construction costs and your opinion on the adequacy of the current budget. So I'm going to write that down because that's question number 9.
We're exactly on time.
Oh, okay. So the budget, we've talked about it a few times, and obviously we understand that the town and the voters have awarded a certain amount of money, and everything has to come out of that, budget. So that's why in our proposal, we started looking at sort of your hard costs and your soft costs. You had the estimates of between, I think it was $300,000 and $400,000 for the demolition of the project. That's a big number, but if we ignore that number, we're in trouble. So we've taken that off. So we sort of backed out numbers. We backed out a fee. We based our fee on some guidelines that the state issues for projects and went a little lower because to be quite honest, we would really love to have this project and work on it. That's why we're all here today, because this is important to us. And as a project, it would be a significant project in both of our offices.
And I think it explains why there are the two of us, because just the nature of this project lends itself to having our different backgrounds. It's
Right.
not made up.
Right. John takes a very technical approach, and we need that because we have a building that has has issues that we want to solve. And then I feel that because what we're reading from you is that you're not fully clear about what you want the final program of the building to be. And I feel that we can have some great conversations about that from our experience about what we can provide and what makes sense and what's cut the bang for the buck and what may be something that isn't as important. So that's all part of managing managing the budget of the project, because between the technical and we'll call it the programmatic and the community involvement, I think we have a lot of items that we need to balance. So that really is what it's about.
And there's a passion behind it, driving it. I mean, I want to see that building restored, and you want to work with a group to make it as.
I think it's such an asset to this community. I mean, it's all, I remember as a child, it was like Monmouth Town Hall. I mean, living in Lewiston, not that far away. And it was like, we heard about it. It's everybody saying it's a beautiful building. I mean, and it is. So I think that, that's why it's exciting to see this and to be part of it, hopefully. But coming back to the budget, which is really the question, there are so many unknowns and so many questions, but we feel it is completely possible that this will be a successful project and that you have the money to do something that will be a benefit to the town. What that is in the end, we need to work that through. But I feel we're really good at prioritizing and helping you to sort of make decisions as to what things are important. Maybe fitting out the kitchen, as something we mentioned earlier, doesn't happen right away, and it's set up as a catering kitchen. So someone has a wedding here, the caterer brings in their warming carts, there's a sink that's low cost. If we put in a full kitchen, then we're talking about an exhaust hood. That's $15,000 to $20,000. That's a big hit. And you may not use that every day, or you may say, well, we're planning to do bake sales every week and we want a full kitchen. And I'm like, well, then it makes sense. So that kind of conversation is really going to help us with the budget and understanding and talking about the budget a little bit more.
So it comes down to use and the condition of the building. So those unknowns will be flushed out by the design team, and we'll share that with you, develop the list of priorities, and then circle back to the budget and then go through that negotiation and come up with a final target.
And that is partly why we feel the construction manager would be a great member of the team, because we feel the project will be more successful with a dynamic budget that we can discuss and have real input from the builder and people who are building it as real costs. I mean, especially now because construction costs are all over the place. And, you know, plywood is still up, cut lumber is down, steel is out, windows are 20 weeks. We hope this is going to get better. We have no control. I mean, one of the window manufacturers told us that they had people offering to pay twice as much in cash for their windows. And the window company is saying that's not how we do business. And I'm glad they said that, but it's also very frustrating as someone who's renovating a kitchen. I can't get windows for 12 weeks. I thought I'd have pull, but no, apparently not.
But just as an example, USM is building a new, I think like 800 student dorm,
Yes.
and they have piles that they need to drive into the soils, which are steel, and they can't get them. It's been months. It's just a vacant site.
And we've seen progress in that, and that things are getting better, but, and hopefully we'll get out of this whole situation sooner than we all hope, but, or sooner than, sooner, just sooner. Now, anytime, please. But materials and things are still being affected, and there's still volatility. Staffing is short. So we hear a lot of times from contractors, on 317 Main, the construction period went from 11 weeks to 11 months to 12 months because they don't have enough people to put on the project. That has a cost to the project because it's an extra month of overhead so we factored that into everything else that we're doing. But
Yeah, so just, I'm coming back to the whole topic of CM. My experience over the years has been that CM process really provides a benefit, particularly in this time. I think it's really important.
And it's still a process of selection. So as a municipality, you're able to interview and select based on qualifications and their proposed fee percentage. So it can still be competitive. I think that's the end of question 9.
Committee questions?
I do. I appreciate very much how you have conveyed a passion and for our building, because I was the one that was probably going to be on the wrecking ball if they tried to take it down, because I am.
Stop them.
Yes, to stop them. No. I was going to
Lori
be.
and I would have been.
I would have been on that ball. Because I'm very passionate, because my father came here in 1957 as the principal, put the 2 additions on, and have run those halls forever. And
Do you ever ring the bell?
yes, we did. Yes, we did, years ago. So my question to you is, because of the passion and because we want to preserve it to represent us in the way we've always been, when you looked at it, did you keep in mind that perhaps keeping the front facade as much as possible, with the columns and, what we had before?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. No, I hadn't thought about it that way because I typically like to keep the whole thing.
Right.
But there are examples, even examples of projects I've worked on where, for instance, we'll keep the 2 sides in the front and then maybe construct a new roof and a new addition in the back. So there are options. It doesn't, depending on how you reuse the building, it might not save you money because you're going to have shoring costs and whatnot. But yes, those types of things can be considered. And if a contractor's on board, they'd be able to say instantly, no, we don't like that idea. That's going to be too expensive for this reason and that reason.
And also have that number to understand in the
Right.
decision-making process.
Right. And I think having that third wheel, the CM involved, providing that perspective can snuff out a bad path early on or provide additional insight that we wouldn't have thought that can lead us down a path that we had never considered.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of the people voted to keep this building is
You want options.
but we want the memories, we want the look
Absolutely.
as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because it would be like for us, you coming in and saying, oh, we're gonna change Compton Hall, and it's like, no. So
Right.
just,
Well, again, I think you need to go through the revealing process of understanding what you've got in its condition. If it's in pretty good condition, it likely is less expensive to repair
Okay,
and make modifications and additions to
Okay.
accomplish your goal.
okay,
I can't imagine doing this project without preserving at least the facade of the building.
right.
I mean,
The front facade, yeah.
the facade, the,
Well, in the
Yeah.
cupola.
well, the cupola, but I mean, at least the entry, the facade, the columns, it's so iconic.
Yeah, see, again, you'd find me on one of the poles, you know, like, no.
It's a beautiful example of classic
It
architecture.
is, it is.
And it's a total aside, but on many of the projects I've worked on, the contractor ultimately determines it's least expensive to extract the cupola, the belfry, the belvedere, put it on the ground and restore it on ground and then
Yes.
just lift it back up and put it in place.
Right, right.
On, just as a side note, 317, because there was a historic cupola on the barn, they took it off. It is in very sad repair. We are putting it at ground level and we're going to stabilize it, but we're not putting it back on the building because it was just too expensive.
Mhm.
But we are going to reuse it. We're not destroying it. So there are many options is my point to discuss, but I think we would obviously have conversations with you about any of these process, but I don't think we're tearing out the front of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd be on that ball.
I've got a
It's
code.
citing, sorry to interrupt, but it's citing its relationship back to the street. We wouldn't even want to move it. It has a certain dignity up on that hill.
Mhm, mhm.
Relationship to the rest of the buildings in the area.
I had a code question. Will that building have to be sprinkled? Depends upon the occupancy level.
Depends on the occupancy level and the number of exits. I believe sprinklering it will give us a lot of benefits to what we can and cannot do. I'm trying to think of, it's 5B construction with assembly. We have done that unsprinkled. One of our projects.
It's very limited.
It's very limited. One of the projects we worked on was the First Parish Church in Freeport that Andrew and I had done. And it was basically converting part of the church into a gallery. The congregation is staying put, but they are leasing space to the Freeport Arts Commission so that they can have choral performances and a gallery. And it's an unsprinklered building and it has these beautiful historic trusses inside.
What's your occupant load?
Our occupant load was 400.
So they're allowing that many people?
We had to put the floor below and above, we had to put a 2-hour rating. And we had to build a 2-hour rating between the gallery and the church. So that proved to be less expensive than putting in a sprinkler system. But in the end, I think putting in a sprinkler system would have given them a whole level of flexibility and openness. That's one of the fundamental questions I think about the building when we start is really understanding. And that's one of the first things we do with code. We look at, the size and what happens if we sprinkler, what happens if we don't.
And understanding how you use the building, if it's an assembly occupancy, which it very likely should be. It has certain restrictions and we take that, we take our floor plans to the state fire marshal and say how the owner wants to use it. And then there's a whole analysis that needs to happen.
And that's for any project in the state.
Right. And so if that could provide space for 200 people in the hall, but you've crossed a threshold where if you don't sprinkle it, you're only allowed to have 100 people, then we bring that information back to you and say, here's the limitation. You can only rent it out to 100 folks. And then that often comes with legal parameters where the owner then is burdened with the liability.
How do you police it?
You have to police it and you have to produce a document that says you will, for every event, you'll do a people count.
Right. And there'll be a placard most likely that lighted.
And you'll have to have a program for ushering people out of the building.
Right. Fundamentally, life safety issues, and I know you guys have heard this lately in the office, they're fundamental. It's like we want to protect life. I mean, that's what
But again, it's all part of this mix of variables. We don't have an answer. And when we have a client that says, we don't know how to do this, we then need to be able to tell you what those limitations are, what the possibilities are, and what the limitations.
What happens if you don't sprinkler? And
Right.
what are the possibilities or opportunities if you do? And get a price on that to understand, is it worth X dollars to do this if it allows us to do this? I mean, it's really about getting information to you to help make decisions on the process.
And the water tank could be underground that they use for the sprinkler, or could they hook it to the water supply?
Both are options. There'd be a test to understand how big the water main is, or if we have to run a second main to the building. At the project I worked on at Camp Sebago and Sebago Lake for the Salvation Army, it's all wood buildings from the 50s. We did a new hall for them that was a 300 person, the Salvation Army band plays there. And they wanted to, they had no water source for anything, if any fire hit in any building. And we put an underground tank, I think a 20,000 gallon tank under the building. It was expensive, but it provided for them the entire campus, ability to extinguish fires. But the first step is to look at what the water main is coming in, what's in the street. There is water main, right? It's not.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I believe.
Does somebody know what the pressure is?
I could probably find that now. My mother used to be on the Water Association, and I'm pretty sure that,
We've got an inside track. then.
yeah, they,
Paul Roop would know.
yeah, and also I think that there's a fire hydrant really
Right.
close here because
Yes.
of the fact that the
That's-
schools
that's
are
a
here.
big benefit.
I'm pretty sure there's a fire hydrant right out in front here somewhere.
I would imagine
So-
near a school, there would
Yes.
be. So again, it's another thing that we would look and see, what is the goal? Let's say we are trying to sprinkler a building. What is the most cost-effective way to do that? If we have adequate water and it's just running a second main for that, then that may be the answer. We need to do a tank and it becomes and the benefits of having a sprinkler system are great and we want to do that, then we need to factor that in. So that's sort of one of these. Obviously, that's a big swing, right, in cost, and we need to figure that out. But that's something that I think we would look at very soon in the project, very early in the process.
There is a fire hydrant that's located right out at the corner of the entrance. FYI.
Yeah.
Always there, right?
Yeah, I thought that there was one right out there, because I'm trying to, things you drive by every day, you don't notice, but I knew there was one like right out there,
All I know
so.
is that helps with insurance costs.
Well, exactly,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
I'm glad he knows it because he's doing the survey.
Excellent.
But, having been from Lewiston and
Yeah.
having, to know the area, I think, and to know what small town is. I mean, and Lewiston was a small town.
When I was there, it was small. It's changed. My
It's
mother and
changed
sister still live there and
yeah.
I visit often, but it's, small town. And we were talking about that moments ago because Andrew is from, Augusta, probably.
Gardner,
So,
yeah.
so understanding where people's passions are.
Yeah, well,
What's
6
important.
generations of my family have gone through those halls. So, and I think before that, there
got me
wasn't,
beat.
I do. Before that, there wasn't a school. My family has been here
Right.
that long, and my father sat on the school board with her father as principal and superintendent. So, there's a lot of passion for what that building
Right.
can be and how we see it for the future.
Absolutely.
And,
That's one of the things that's special about Maine is the multi-generations.
Yes.
I might
Yeah.
feel sometimes, and maybe my grandparents immigrated from Canada,
yeah,
which
Yeah.
is my heritage, is French Canadian. So, so we're kind of newbies here
well,
because.
where
there's
does the
people-
ski come from? though?
My father is a hockey player from Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Moved to Maine and
I knew that name though,
yeah,
because I worked in Lewiston, Auburn
yeah.
for
He
30
did all the
years,
announcing
so-
at the arena.
Yes.
Hockey games for high school hockey. But in any
Yes,
case.
that's how I knew the
digress.
name. But I knew the name, so, yeah.
We grew up with our French heritage.
Yeah.
French
Yeah.
Canadian.
Any other questions from the committee?
No, I really appreciate everything again, and I appreciate your enthusiasm very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, just to summarize, thank you for the opportunity. We're pleased to kick off your process. We know you have a tough few days here of listening to people talk all the time, and I'm sure I've worn you out already. But it's really, as we said, this is an important project for us. It's something we're very passionate about. I'm so happy that John and I and everyone we've partnered for this project. We think we can help you make this project something special for the town, which to sort of bring echo that passion that people have for it that caused them to vote to restore this. And we'd be very excited to help you with that.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, as you
Thank you.
know, we're interviewing 2 firms tonight. We'll be interviewing 2 more tomorrow night. And then the committee is having a meeting on Thursday night.
Good girl.
I keep saying Friday. I keep thinking the end of the week. Thursday night, hopefully the committee is going to be able to come to a decision that night. You may not hear back from us though until next week
Okay.
because we're not open on Fridays.
Great.
Then the recommendation goes to the select board, and it would be my hope that we would be able to get that on the next select board meeting, which is October 6th, I believe.
Okay, great.
But we'll keep you posted and let you know, and you'll hear from me one way or the other.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much.
You have all our information.
Mhm.
Obviously, if there are any questions, we are more than happy to answer, provide anything additional. But
Thank
the
you.
process is off.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
everyone for coming.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'm gonna put the video in the audience.
She's a terror.
How can she? She's not even out of a crib yet, is she?
Well, yeah. She definitely has an attitude already.
Oh, God. You gonna take after Charlie or what?
I was gonna say, it's gotta come from Charlie.
It's not going down the road from Charlie.
Thank you very much.
so
facility.
much sense to have it be a catering kitchen as opposed to this full-blown, monstrosity
Yeah.
with
It's gonna
vents
cost
and
But then
all
local
that.
caterers will
a
say,
lot
well,
of money
there's
to
a
put a
place to
full-blown
go.
kitchen in there
Exactly.
with everything involved.
Exactly.
Was I good?
You chased it
Right.
out and.
Yeah,
That's
what
right.
the, he didn't even speak to me.
Yeah.
He did not even
Don't worry,
speak
he
to me.
doesn't
like
like me
that.
anymore. So,
Yeah.
Audio's on.
Okay. Oh, well. Okay.
Got a couple minutes.
Sarah's
Okay,
coming
I'll
up.
tell Sarah that
Um,
we're back on now.
Yeah.
Someone had said that the old Grange Hall was supposed to be a
Yes.
community
Yes.
facility
I
for
thought-
emergencies,
Yes.
but they don't have shower facilities there.
Mhm.
So if we put in 3 or 4 shower facilities here, maybe we could get some federal money to do that. And then we got to get someone from the fairgrounds to see if they ever have any plans of having like bluegrass festivals there where people come and spend the weekend.
It'd be perfect to be able to, to have a facility that close to.
Right.
Yeah. Have options at the fairgrounds
We are
to use it for
fortunate now.
things. Yeah.
Just the location to the fairground.
Thank Dr. Kumston for that little bit of
Yeah.
land too, so
I think there's some good
there's
stuff that
definitely
will happen there.
opportunities, yeah.
Right. Like a bluegrass festival
Yeah.
or.
Absolutely.
I mean, the number of people that go to Blistered Fingers down in Litchfield at the fairgrounds there, I mean, twice a year.
Right, I drove by there the other
It's a
day.
moxie.
It was, yes.
It is a moxie.
Are we ready?
That's what I get out of there.
He's just waiting. Hello. Oops.
Oh, no, we're good.
I don't know. I texted her and said that we're back on now, so.
18 here.
Couple seconds.
I got 17.
Mhm.
Norm, can you hear us?
Oops.
Can you hear us?
No, not yet.
Is this Oak Point?
Unmute yourself. You're
Hello.
muted.
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Yay. We can hear you. Good evening, Norm. Thank you.
Good evening, but the speaker on my laptop wasn't working, so I had to plug in my earbuds. Sorry about that.
Gotcha. Well, hopefully you'll be able to hear all of us okay. So we're going to have you go down through the questions that we sent you
Okay,
and stick to that schedule closely. And at the end, the committee will take, 15, 20 minutes to ask you questions that maybe they want to flesh some things out. And then we'll wrap up at the end of an hour.
sounds like a
So
plan.
it's all yours.
Can I share my screen? We'd like to show you some photos at the same time as we talk through the questions.
I don't have the ability to do that from here.
Oh, no, okay, all
That's too
right.
bad.
But we have your proposals, so any photos that you included in there.
Okay, well, I guess we'll do our best to wing it. We've got a nice little presentation for you. We'll have to email it up to you afterwards. My name is Tyler Barter. I'm a principal and an architect with Oak Point. Let me introduce our team. You know Norm Lemire. He's been working with the Monmouth for a long time with the school project. Sarah Smith's an interior designer, space planner, also involved in the Monmouth Elementary and Middle School. And then Peter
Hey, Aaron.
McGovern is another architect of ours who has done a number of our community buildings, town halls and other municipal buildings, and also has a knack for the historic side.
Good evening.
So I know that you know a little bit about Oak Point, but we wanted to talk a little bit about our team and how our approach is somewhat different than others that you may have be be speaking to. We're an integrated design firm, and we have all of the trades that are necessary for this, minus a few specialty consultants in-house. So on this project, we're envisioning the need for some light survey work, some hazardous materials, and possibly, depending on how demolition goes and some other exploratory things, some geotechnical engineering. So other than that, all of the design and engineering disciplines will be done in-house. We wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of the projects that are very relevant to what you have proposed for your facility. I've got one, and then Peter can talk a little bit about another. The first one up, a little bit easier with the graphics, but we'll email that up to the committee after this meeting, is a project that we're working on currently over in Camden, and it's the renovation of the Mary E. Taylor building. What that one was about, in 2012, we started working with the district, and we ended up coming up with a proposal for a new building and then a renovation of a historic 25,000 square foot portion of their existing middle school. So once the new facility was constructed, we actually tore down the existing middle school, leaving this historic 1925 building. And we've been slowly converting that over the last year to central office for the district, along with their Zenith program for adult education. Throughout the whole project, we've identified a number of different ways of being somewhat sympathetic to the historic nature of the building, retaining that architectural character, and then providing a lot of modern improvements with all new systems, new windows, and then new interior finishes. We've also done a lot of work to make the building a lot more habitable as well by removing walls, adjusting traffic and movement flows, and then integrating it with the rest of the campus as well. Overall, I think this is an improvement to the facility that'll help it last another 100 years. Norm, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah,
for-
Norm, I made you co-host, and I don't know if that will give you
Oh,
the
that'll do
ability
it.
to share your screen.
I think so, yeah.
I don't see the share screen option. Would it be across the bottom? Have security, participants, pause, reaction, and apps.
Let me play with it and see what I can do.
Okay.
Okay.
Doesn't look at Norm. We've set these up to be so careful because one of our select board meetings got bombed last year.
Oh,
Oh, no.
right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll just continue from where we're going, I guess. So the third question was describe the scope of your property survey work to be completed. So starting off, we reached out to somebody in your town, a local surveyor who we worked with on a past project, who has quite a bit of knowledge about the property. So he'll be providing us with a topographic and boundary survey based on his current knowledge, and then updating the data to include any recent work. One of the obvious things is the addition of the sidewalk along Academy Road. Then our team will send a team out to the building to do some documentation, taking measurements and creating existing condition documents and some base drawings. And of course, we'll send all our team of engineers and architects over to do building investigations, perform inspections, and document existing conditions. That will include the site, utilities, building structure, an envelope, interior construction and finishes, fire protection, and the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical systems. And lastly, as Tyler mentioned, we're going to have an industrial hygienist that we plan on sending to the site. According to your hazardous material report that you shared with us, one thing that wasn't covered were PCBs. So we'll do some testing around the sealants around windows and doors for that as needed. So that's pretty much the conclusion of that question, I think. Number 4 talks about the town has limited funds. We'd like to understand how we will manage our design costs so that we don't get any surprises.
Yes. So, yeah, the surprises for owners are almost as bad as the surprises for architects, and not good for us either. So we take this very seriously throughout the entire course of construction, beginning on day one. For us, the first thing that we do is make sure that we're scheduling adequate resources on our end. So we're staffing the project appropriately. We're making sure that the people that are assigned to the office are assigned to the project have the time necessary to make sure that they're doing really high quality field work. So really understanding what's out there. That ground truth, as we call it, is really important to really start establishing a clear and concise starting point. So making sure we're starting off on the right foot. That adequate resource component goes out through the entire course of the design. So we're making sure that at each one of our major milestones, someone in our office is doing a quality control checklist, and that's a multi-pronged approach. So we have another architect, another structural or electrical engineer do an independent review, someone that's not directly involved. And then we have another person that goes through and takes a look at the project holistically. That way we're trying to identify anything that could come up as a question as early as we can. The next thing actually is being very proactive, starting with the communication. So we're making sure that we're building clear lines of communication between our staff and your project representatives. We like to make sure that there's a single point of contact at Oak Point. So Norm will be that person leading the charge and coordinating all of the information flowing back and forth from ours. And then as the need always comes up, making sure that the subject matter experts are being brought to the table to have direct conversations with your other subject matter experts. So talking about building controls and security and different types of improvement to make sure that we all understand where the project's going. Throughout the course of the project, we're going to be making a lot of trips up there, especially during construction. So really putting eyes on things, overseeing what's going to be happening throughout that construction duration. And then also continuing to build those relationships. So we really see this as a partnership. So starting early and often, we're going to want to meet with you, really understand how the dynamics of the teams work. And as we progress through the process, we'll bring the contractor on board as well to make sure that we all have that same relationship, build that level of trust, and hopefully make that lead to a much more successful project. The other thing is we'd like to make sure that we're prepared. So making sure that you have a project contingency early in the process is good. So we're not going to design right up to your maximum amount. We recommend setting aside a 5% bid contingency for some of those unforeseen things and market fluctuations. You probably hear a lot about that right now. And then we'll also recommend, depending on what the final scope is, either a 5 or a 10% construction contingency. We know that things are going to pop up that are unforeseen when we get out and start opening up walls or taking off roof and finding rot. So making sure that we're prepared throughout this process to address those and that the budget isn't strapped on day one. Norm,
So the
I'll turn it
next-
back to you for question 5.
Yeah, the next question has to do with project delivery. And it says, do you feel this project is best suited for design bid build or construction manager for delivery? If we use a CM form, does your proposal include working with the town to procure CM in coordination with the CM? So our proposal assumed that we were going to do this as a design bid build project. Not to say that we're not open to other approaches. We just think that putting this out to bid that way is the best way to get competitive prices for you. And we don't foresee anything that would really warrant a need for a construction manager, like phasing difficulties. The building's not occupied right now, so that really helps the process, and any tight timelines or anything like that. So that's our recommendation, but like I said, we're open to working with you.
All right, and I guess I'm here to talk. Are you done now?
Yeah, historic preservation.
Yeah, and I think the project is more suited for historic restoration rather than preservation. From our experience, we did a project for the city of Rochester, New Hampshire on a 1900 fire station that was built, like I said, in 1900 in this brick Romanesque style with a lot of detail on the front facade. In the 1970s, in a state of modernization, they built a new fire station to replace this old one. And in that, they put on a very straight, flat brick veneer. And so in our project to renovate this building back to city offices for badly needed space for the city of Rochester, we worked with a historic consultant to see what we could do to find what was behind that very plain, very 1970s modern veneer that was put on. And fortunately, we were able to take that off and restore this building back to its 1900 grandeur. We see the same sort of opportunities at your building where the addition has been put onto the side of the back there. We will have to explore what that facades were originally when we take off that addition and see what we can restore that back to. And certainly the back of the building, we have those smaller windows and the wider window openings that it would be really nice to put in the original sized windows for those openings to let in a lot of the natural light back there. And additionally, we know that an elevator is requested in this building. And like in Rochester, we were very limited for space and a small amount of area, just like your building here. And we utilize something that is called a limited use, limited application elevator, or a LULA. And it is designed specifically for smaller buildings that don't have to travel more than 2 or 3 stops. And it is a much smaller footprint, requires a less deep pit and a smaller overrun. So when preservationists put additions onto the buildings like the elevator tower appears to need to be, this will be much smaller in scale and allow the original building character and mass to be prevalent rather than this larger elevator addition might overtake and sort of destroy that character. If we could even get that elevator inside the building, it would even be better, but we'd have to see how that would work out. So yes, we think that this is definitely a good candidate for historic restoration and preserving what is there. So yeah. The costs, any cost implications to this? These Lula elevators are much cheaper than a massive real elevator. I'm not real elevator, it's a real elevator. It has doors and the footprint is just big enough for someone in a wheelchair and their assistant to fit in. And it operates at a slower speed, but again, it's for limited use and limited application, meant just to satisfy that ADA requirement of getting people up on the second floor. Those additions have to come off. So what we find behind there of the original facade is going to need some work. So restoring it back to anything that we can find that might match for when it was built wouldn't be any more expensive than fixing it as it is. So I wish we could show you what we did at Rochester, but when we email you that presentation, you will see. So
Linda, I actually just did send you an email of the PDF of our presentation, if you'd like to see it.
I'm looking at instructions on Google on how to allow you to share your screen.
Oh. Multitasking.
I'm not ignoring you.
Yeah.
It's
That was sent to your email.
Yeah, if anyone there has a laptop right there, we can send it to your email.
And it was in your proposal, correct? Because I was looking at that, just the facade of it in your proposal of the City Hall Annex renovation. in
Yeah.
City of Rochester. Yeah.
That's the building. Yeah.
So you've
already got it?
that it's in what I have from your presentation.
Yeah, there's one photo of that, I believe,
Yeah,
Yeah.
or a couple.
Yeah.
does anyone have the ability to get an email there that we could send
Yes,
the PDF?
yeah,
I'm
You
sending
can-
what you just sent me now.
Okay, great. Because that one does have some great graphics too of the Camden project, which is extremely similar to what you're doing.
So I guess, Norm, I'm done if you
Okay.
want to go on to 7.
Yeah, 7 would be the construction period services.
Sean is
And-
way.
Okay.
Okay.
So you asked, please expand on what your proposal includes for construction services. So not just construction administration, but we'd also be helping you out with construction procurement, which begins with the advertising of the project. We put that in newspapers. Often what we do is we run a short ad in the paper, which will refer you to the full notification to the contractors that can be posted on the town website. We also help you with distribution of the construction documents. We work with a local printer and give them the whole set of documents, and then they keep track of contractors who pick up drawings and specifications who are potential bidders. We'll conduct a pre-bid walkthrough with the contractors, bring them through the building so they know what they're bidding on, and give them an opportunity to set up some questions before they submit bids. We typically create an email address where the contractors can send us those questions. It helps us keep track of everything, and we can send responses by addendum, and so that all the contractors have all the same information. The bidding process, when the bids come in, we assist you with opening the bids and reviewing them and making recommendations if there are any inconsistencies in the bids between the contractors. Talk to you about that and help you make a good decision. We help you by putting together the construction contract for the contractor. We'll work with you on that. We will start with a pre-construction meeting. Get to know the contractor, all the contacts, set the ground rules for how we expect things to operate. And then from there on, we'll have bi-weekly construction conferences to go over the schedule, any upcoming events, answer questions, and that's when we also have the opportunity to view the site. We'll walk through the site and see what's going on. We review all the submittals that we require the contractors to send to us. Any materials that they're putting into the building, we need to make sure it conforms to the specifications that we've written. We'll send them back with comments, and if we don't accept the products that they've submitted, they'll resubmit. We'll review them again until they get it right. We'll respond to requests for information as the contractor come up with questions during construction. They'll submit them to us, and we'll set either straight simple answers, or sometimes it involves providing sketches, details to help them understand how we want things constructed. We'll do other on-site inspections, not just at our bi-weekly meetings, but we'll send our team of designers, the architects and the engineers there periodically to make sure everything is being constructed as expected. We'll work with, if there are any changes that need to be made, we'll send out requests for proposals and then review the proposals that the contractors send and make recommendations to the owner as to how to move forward, accept them or not. Applications for payment, so monthly applications that the contractor will be sending when they want to get paid. That every time they get to a certain point in their work, they'll be setting those. Everything will be itemized, but we'll review it, make sure that what they say is completed, it is done, and we'll make a recommendation of any modifications that needs to be made to that, and sign off on it and recommend that you do as well. The last thing we usually do is the process of the punch list. Well, the team will go through the building when the contractor says that they've completed the construction. We'll walk through and take note of anything that doesn't look right, any minor defects, things that aren't working, and we'll send the list to you and the contractor and give them the opportunity to come back and rectify any of these things. And when they say that they're complete, we'll come back and verify that for you. That's other than the review of the final closeout materials. You might have some operation and maintenance materials that you'll have and record documents, and then we'll be able to close out the project.
No worries.
Additional services, your question was, please discuss any services that you have not included that might be included. So I mentioned the industrial hygienist. We've assumed a certain amount of work based on the reports that you've given us. The hygienist will provide the design and specifications needed to perform any removal or abatement of those materials, and also will be conducting the construction period services for that, and the testing of the PCBs, as I mentioned. But there is potential that, depending on what they find with those PCBs, that there might be additional testing that might need to take place. So we've only assumed that they're going to be testing probably 24 samples around windows and doors, but we did not include anything beyond that, or even creating a work plan that would be required by the EPA if there's serious conditions that they run into. We did not carry the cost of a clerk of the works. On large jobs, we usually have somebody that performs as our eyes and ears on site every day, so that even if we're not on site, we know what's going on. We don't feel that this project is large enough to warrant that, but that's something we can discuss if you feel it's necessary. But like I said, that price was not in our proposal. Printing costs. We would assume that most of the documentation would be provided electronically. So we've really limited how much printing we included in the proposal. We will do the printing required for the state fire marshal and the planning board documentation for those applications. Tyler mentioned geotechnical. We did not carry a cost for those services. There is some potential that when the parts of the building are removed and where the elevator's going, we might want to do some of that work, but that'll be determined at that point, I believe. I think that covers everything that we have and have not included in our proposal.
And then occasionally there are some other things that we do perform, such as furniture design and selection and technology, but those are things that a lot of times owners have people on staff that can take care of that. So additional services that can be performed, but not always needed. I think number 9 is coming back to me, and which is
cost estimating and budget.
Okay, review your approach to estimating construction costs and your opinion on the adequacy of the current budget. So cost estimating is something that we've elected over the 42 years that we've been in business to do in-house. It's not something that we feel is an activity that really should be subcontracted out to someone not directly involved in the day-to-day design and detailing of the project. So we, again, much like our quality control, quality assurance program, we take a very holistic approach. So the people who are doing the cost estimates, takeoffs, and budgetary numbers on our side are the subject matter experts. So each one of the disciplines involved in your project will be the one that actually is putting those numbers together. We take a different approach depending on which types of systems. Some things are much easier to figure out with number of studs and square footage of drywall. But a lot of times we will use a lot of industry resources that we have. So we'll talk to suppliers and vendors who are providing specialty equipment. This comes in really handy on mechanical, electrical, plumbing side, where large equipment that could sway a project budget one way or another with are being directly quoted and giving us that information up front. We compare and evaluate based on our previous experiences as well. So we're constantly keeping track of projects that are bidding and making sure that we're comparing how those numbers are coming in against our estimate. So really taking that holistic approach. That continues right on through the entire design process. So at each one of the major milestones, we will provide an updated construction cost estimate to go along with our submission. We're constantly keeping an eye on the kind of the fluctuation right now. It's a bit of a roller coaster for the estimating side, which is definitely a challenge, but keeping an eye on where these material prices are going, doing a little bit of forecasting, looking at the impacts on the hurricane season on construction materials is the big one. And then of course the ongoing pandemic related expenses. We're seeing an uptick in a number of things based on supply and also availability of raw materials. So keeping an eye on those, understanding how that's impacting, and then doing our best to forecast and make adjustments throughout the process. Knowing that the budget will be a challenge on this project, we also like to make sure that we're providing a number of alternates. So if there are things that you really feel are important to the project, they can be designed and then competitively bid out. So that way, if you want to add a generator or a different piece of equipment, we can get that information out to the contractors while we still have multiple doing competitive bids. It's the best for the long-term health of the project budget, I think, is to be respectful early on. Norm and I have done a little bit of kind of the back of the napkin guesstimating on some of this from the early on. And it does look like things are going to be tight, given the information that you had shared with the demolition costs, some lead construction pieces, the fluctuation in that market. I think we're going to have to be really respectful as we're making those decisions and really try to be aware moving forward what the implications of each one of those things are. So we can work with you to help phase in different components if the budget does become more of a challenge. But it's something that we would want to take a look at hard early. So I think that's the short of it is we're a little concerned about the amount of scope and the available funds, but can work with you to come up with something that meets your long-term needs. And I think that was it for our
Great.
responses. If you do have a chance to kind of go through the pretty picture version of the presentation, you'll see a few more pictures of the Mary E. Taylor building going on in Camden, the one that Peter had described over in Rochester, and how those are very similar to what you're doing here for a proposed project. And we'd love to continue the dialogue with any additional questions and answers or clarifications that you need from us.
I apologize for the non-screen sharing ability, but I've tried, can't figure that out. Committee questions?
I have a question. Your experience with bell towers, how do you feel about our bell tower?
We'd have to take a look at it, see the condition of it. Is there any concern with anybody that it shouldn't be there?
Oh, no, we would like to preserve it.
Yeah, then, we'd have to take a look at it, get our structural folks out there, see if it needs any shoring up. Anything that we do to shore it up, we would want to keep it into the character of the existing, feature and not make it look like a suddenly new steel attachment to it, but do it all in period look.
And we do have some experience with this type of thing as well. We have a project under construction now at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard that has a very similar historic clock tower.
Correct. Yep.
That is currently ongoing, and it's taking a very that one's a much more architecturally significant restoration project where they actually have the State Historic Preservation Office involved. The base has their own historic preservation folks, and they're taking a lot more stringent approach to the reconstruction of their tower. But we do have the experience with that exact type of building.
Right. At Rochester, it was just a cupola on top of the building. And when we got up there, the existing one was rotted beyond repair, unfortunately, and so we had to take it down and build a replica. But hopefully your bell tower is in better shape and we can save it.
I think one of the things for our town in voting to approve this and keeping our building is the front facade is very important to us. It's part of Monmouth. It's when people say Monmouth, they either think of Cumston Hall or the original Monmouth Academy. So have you all seen our front building, been here to see it?
Many times.
You know, yeah, I know you have, Norm. But I mean, that front facade is very, very important to us. And in trying to, I think you use the word restore as opposed to, preserve, but restore it. Is that something that, you're taking into consideration that is important to Monmouth?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things, I mean, that's what happened in Camden, that people had such a connection to the building that it broke their hearts to see it go away. And I think that's probably the similar situation that you have here. People just have a connection to that building, and to see it go away would be heartbreaking. So we definitely would want to bring it back. There's questions that we would have, there's some original photographs of the building that don't have that front porch on it with the pediment front.
Right.
So the question would be whether you want to restore it in kind of how it is now, because that's kind of what people are connected to, that, and not way back to the 1800, unless you have some real old timers there, like they might not be connected to that older section. So we'll want to know the level of restoration that, because it's not going to be like a historical landmark. It's not on the register for that. So if we're not trying to bring it back to the original, just getting a scope of what your group wants to keep on the building would be, great to know as we go through the project.
Right. I think it's basically the way you're looking at it now. The front facade now is what the majority of the townspeople here are connected with.
Sure.
Because I wasn't here in 1850.
No.
Contrary to
Yeah, no matter what people tell you.
In the Rochester project, we had, before it was approved to actually save the building, there was a lot of pressure in the town to actually tear that building down because people didn't know what was behind that front facade. If you've had a chance to look at the pictures in the presentation of what it looked like before, there were a lot of townsfolk who wanted to just tear it down. So when we showed them the opportunity and through drawings and elevations prior to removing that veneer, we got a lot of support to, yes, keep it. And now it's really sort of cemented that it's right in the center of town. If you've ever been to Rochester, right next to the Opera House. It's very successful. The public comes in as it's a public meeting point for people who need permits and whatnot. So it's become very successful. So I hope that would be the same with your building here.
That's my plan.
Other questions?
I'm good.
Larry?
Oh, nope.
Chris?
I think we're good.
Is there anything in that presentation you want us to talk about, explain? Any photos that you see?
I like the idea about the elevator. Is it a closed elevator or?
It is an
open?
Yep, it's an entirely closed elevator with a sliding door. There's a shaft.
You Googled it?
So there's some good pictures here that, show the size and, and if you did a Lula was it in the Rochester building, because it's actually enclosed in the building, or was there already an elevator there that you worked around because it had been through a rehab?
Nope, there was no elevator there. And there, the size of the building required 2 stairways and an elevator. So we had to find space in a very limited envelope to fit that in. At the Building 13 project that Tyler mentioned, that is actually going to be a stair tower addition off the side, where once again, we're going to be using a Lula elevator to save space and to reduce that size of that addition. So it doesn't overpower the original building.
Yeah, they're really convenient for historic preservation projects.
Mm-hmm.
Just that even, reducing the size of the elevator shaft by 30 to 40% can be pretty significant.
And the cost saving is, I know they're come in at less than 100,000. I mean, I don't know the exact price of a brand new elevator right now, but it's probably closer to 2.
And they have to be inspected every year?
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, your
biggest
long-term
difference is
maintenance-
sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
As you say, your long-term maintenance will be almost identical, I think, between a conventional elevator and Lula. The state is still going to come down and do the inspection. Really, from an occupant side, if we hadn't said it was a Lula, you may not notice. It is be a little bit slower, but it's
A
function
little
wise,
slower and a little smaller. It doesn't, so it's not like a rescue. You can't fit a
gurney,
full,
right.
in there like you would for a high-rise building.
Well, in the second floor of this building is relatively very small. I mean, and I honestly don't foresee the public going to the second floor for any reason. For me, if we have to go through a list and say, what can we afford? Where can we cut? An elevator period to me is not important because the second floor has pretty limited options. And, making sure that we get what we need on the first floor. And if the second floor is for non-public use, then an elevator period for me gets crossed off the list. So that's one of the thoughts I have about elevators.
But it could be added at some later date. Is that possible? Or?
I wouldn't think so if it's part of your interior or if.
Unless you
it's a
did it as the
regular-
outside.
outside, but then it'd need to be a conventional elevator with a pit and a cinder block, so.
You could build it you could use an elevator or Lula in a exterior addition.
Exterior.
Yeah, but it would still be the cinder block and the, some sort of brick veneer over that. But right. It can always certainly the interior design could be designed so that there is a space for it at an additional time.
Because we received some conceptual drawings of what you anticipated to do inside the building. Is that something that is there a lot more work to do to determine what's going to go on in there, or is there a lot of flexibility as to maybe we can fit an elevator in that plan?
To me, that was a concept. That was an idea to, thrown out there. I think that was done 3 weeks or something before we went to vote, and it was a concept. I mean, the kitchen was a concept. The elevator was a concept. It was, 11th hour.
Right.
So,
I think it was something our code enforcement officer kind of pushed us to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We looked at it because we did the,
Kind of stress that.
yeah, we have existing drawings that when we did our field work prior, when we did the school project, we went in and field measured the whole building, and that concept plan does retain a lot of the same area spaces. Like that kitchen is an existing space now, and some of the office spaces upstairs. So the layout looks like it's reusing a lot of existing space within the building, and then tweaking some of it. So it wasn't like a complete gut with that layout, but we would have to meet with the what your intended use is for those spaces and review everything again and go through it and find out fine tune the design and make sure that we go through life safety code and all of that too, to make sure that it meets all the code needs that we'll have to hit.
From an ADA requirement, if you didn't put an elevator to the second floor, what usages could we use it for? If there's no public access, could it be storage or something like that if you have no ADA access to the second floor?
Yes, I think depending on the size of it, could be limited to storage, but unfortunately, if once you start putting any office space up there, it might not be open to the general public, but it would need to be accessible to any working staff.
That was my curiosity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
I think we're good. Thank you
think we're
so
good.
much.
Thank you all. for
Thank
being-
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all for having us.
So you know, we're doing 2 interviews tonight. We're doing 2 interviews tomorrow night.
Right.
Committee is getting back together on Thursday evening. That'll be a Zoom meeting as well if you want to tune in. And hopefully making some kind of a decision that night, hopefully, not necessarily. So I don't want to get anyone's hopes up. But our goal is to try to keep this moving forward. And if the committee makes a recommendation on Thursday night, it will be going to the select board on October 6th for final award of bid or award of proposal. So we will keep you in the loop. You may not hear from me until next week because we're not open on Fridays.
Okay.
But I will get in touch with you one way or the other with the decision of the committee.
Great. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you for your time.
Have a good
You're
evening.
welcome. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
I learned a lot. But, so it's complicated,
Yeah.
the details.
Mhm.
Hi, Sarah.